Good day, and welcome to The Pipeline. Today is December 3rd, 2025. I'm Fildebrandt, publisher of the Western Standard. I'm joined by the usual crew in the studio here, former Western Standard opinion editor Nigel Hannaford.
Good to be here.
And Western Standard senior Alberta columnist Cory Morgan.
Always a pleasure.
And joining us for a very special day, you're going to find out in a second why, we've got Western Standard's VC Bureau Chief Jarryd Jaeger. Welcome to The Pipeline, Jarryd.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So we'll be talking about Bill C9, bill in Parliament right now, which is designed to make sure you can't hurt people's feelings online, but now is going to quite explicitly strip people of freedom of speech and freedom of religion around quoting things from religious scripture, which, the Bible. That could be construed by some as hateful, removing any provisions that were in that bill. We're going to be talking about that. We'll be talking about the pipeline deal between Alberta Premier Danielle Smith and Prime Minister Mark Carney. We were talking about it in anticipation of it on the pipeline last week. Now we actually see the deal. Is it a Faustian pipeline bargain? I don't know. I'm not convinced one way or another yet, but it's not quite as shiny and pretty as we were hoping it would be. But first, the reason we've got Jarryd Jaeger on the program today. BC Conservative leader John Rustad walks the plank. Earlier today, our BC Bureau Chief Jarryd Jaeger broke the story that a majority of the BC Conservative caucus signed a letter declaring non-confidence in him. And then just moments ago, the board of the BC Conservative Party voted to remove him as leader. Jarryd, why don't you add a bit more detail about what's been going on? There's a lot of moving parts of the story. It's just developing as we're talking. But why don't you just give us a little background and what's been going on today?
Yeah, so it's been a pretty busy day, but for anyone who's been paying attention to BC politics over the past few months, this shouldn't come as too big of a surprise. So more and more people have been calling on Rustad to resign from both within and outside the party. And today was kind of the final nail in the coffin. 20 out of the 39 MLAs in his caucus signed on saying that they no longer supported his leadership. And so once that came out, he held a press conference and basically said, I'm not going anywhere. That's it. And then, like you said, just moments ago, the Board of Directors passed a resolution to oust him as leader of both caucus and the party, and Surrey White Rock MLA Trevor Halford has been appointed interim leader of both the caucus and the party.
So, okay, let me get this straight. So there was the letter released by the majority of the BC Conservative caucus declaring they had no confidence in Rustad as leader and requesting the appointment of interim leader. Rustad then held a press conference after that saying, doesn't matter if the majority of my caucus have voted to remove me, I'm still the leader, right?
Yeah, someone asked him, does this put you in an untenable position? And he said, no, not really. And he basically, so he said his argument was there's too many things that are going on in BC under the BC NDP, and ordinary people don't care about this, internal party squabbling, which is true, people don't. But when it comes down to it, there's not much you can do as a party if you're not united. And if there's all this stuff going on inside, it takes time away from actually tackling the issues that matter. So,
well, look, Cory, John Rustad, bless his heart. He did obviously incredible things for this party, getting it to where it is. But his leadership ran into really tough waters. He appears to have become paranoid, trying to fire everyone from caucus that he suspected of anything or disagreeing with him on things, which is ironic because that's how he got kicked out of the BC Liberal caucus, very strangely. But he doesn't seem to understand I don't think most people understand the Constitution, but the leader of a political party and the leader of an opposition should understand one of the simple parts of our Constitution, and it's the idea of confidence. Whoever can hold the confidence of the whole legislature or parliament is the premier or the prime minister. But to stay the leader of your party and your caucus, you have to have the confidence of your caucus. And today, the majority of his caucus declared non-confidence in him. That is like the prime minister or the premier saying, I don't care if the House has voted non-confidence in me. I'm not going to be distracted by that. I'm still the prime minister or I'm still the premier. That's not the way the system works. John Rustad appears to be totally off the reservation here.
I think, you know what, I can't help but draw a parallel to former Premier Jason Kenney when it all comes to it. He did a lot of work too. He united two parties. He managed to win over the NDP, but then shortly after getting in, just everything started to fall apart. But he stubbornly, I guess, they get the sense of accomplishment. I did all this. Damn it, you guys. I have the right to stay in the leadership this long, and they just aren't going to give out until they dragged out kicking and screaming. With Premier Kenney, it took a whole vote. He tried every mechanism he could to hang in there and hold on, but when it finally push came to shove, the members voted him out. I think Rustad's in a similar mindset. Just I've got to use every possible way. They don't understand what they're doing. I deserve to be here, and he just won't read that writing on the wall. And it's a shame because, already the amount of dignity lost is massive. But if you're pulled out virtually by your ear from that seat, you just don't have any left whatsoever when you go. There's a difference between building something and getting there and being able to maintain it once you're there. And he can't hold this together, obviously. The only person who doesn't know it anymore is him.
Nigel, sometimes leaders have failed, but they've been able to still have a political career in that same caucus afterwards. Joe Clark comes to mind. Stockwell Day had a pretty messy one, but he did manage. He was a tougher one, but he did manage to stay on as a member of the Alliance and then Conservative caucus federally and as cabinet minister. Brian Jean did not initially with Jason Kenney because there was so much bad blood there, but he did come back. Serves now under Danielle Smith. You can think Andrew Scheer. Andrew Scheer wasn't too bloody. He went down pretty quickly, so there wasn't too much blood on the floor. But John Rustad has held on so hard, tried to kick out so many people. I mean, I guess there's some parallels with Stockwell Day in that respect, but does it seem like there's too much blood on the floor for him to even be able to remain as a member of that team? Or is this just, he now just needs to completely exit the stage?
Well, the latter. I mean, look, he's not leading anybody at the moment. He's just going for a walk. Who is going to back him up? Who's going to want to run under his banner if there was a snap election in British Columbia? I mean, you give the man his due. He almost won, but he didn't win. So that's like losing. So therefore, he has no leverage. He is not in a position to reward. He's not in a position to do anything. So he's going to have to accept that somebody else is going to do it. Whether he can hang on as a member of the party, as the respected former leader, very much up to him what he does in the next 24 hours. If he says, you guys, if the ship goes down, you're all going down with me, then he's done. But you mentioned Stockwell Day. Stockwell Day is a man of tremendously fine character, and he accepted the judgment of the party at that time, and he did it in such a way that he was able to serve the new Conservative government under Harper. It was extremely valuable. He was brilliant in foreign affairs, and there is that, but you've got to be humble, and I don't see that in Mr. Rustad's response here.
Jarryd, so he refused to step down unconstitutionally when his caucus had voted non-confident. Because a lot of this is just kind of behind the scenes, but I've had people, pretty senior people, well-placed people in the BC Conservatives tell me that members of caucus for quite some time had been trying to bring a vote of non-confidence against him in the caucus, but then the caucus, John Rustad's caucus chair, was just refusing to allow a vote to take place, which I mean, I really wish I had a boring book of Robert's Rules of Order to give them. You could then impeach the chair at that point. You just impeach the chair if the chair is not allowing a vote, and then you can get to there. But, I mean, the other way around was what they did today, which is you just sign a letter. They would then just give that to the speaker. And at that moment, you cease to be, you don't have the confidence of your caucus. You cease to be the leader of that caucus. Otherwise, legally speaking, anyone could declare themselves the leader of the caucus. That's the way it works. It's confidence-based. Just by convention, if you were elected the leader of the party, you're the leader of the caucus. But the caucus can remove you at any time and replace you with anyone that they like. He refuses to go when the caucus votes to oust him unconstitutionally. But now the party the party's board has voted to remove him. So I don't know. One of the things I've been told was that the party was at least strongly considering maybe this will be kind of a further carrot and stick. I don't know if they've done it yet, but one of the things told by some of the sources I've talked to is that if he would not step down, they would also revoke his party membership and ban him as a local candidate. Now that's not even just the nuclear option. That's the Carthaginian option. You're salting the earth, murdering everyone, and selling the women and children to slavery at that point. But I suppose that would be one further. As far as you know, that is not, judging by the look on your face, that is not what we know that they've done yet, right?
No, I haven't heard anything about that yet. No.
Okay. Well, I got the impression, folks I'm talking to, that is kind of that's the ultimate stick as opposed to the carrot. It's like, you're going to accept our judgment, or you're literally not even a grassroots member of the party, and you're not allowed to be a local candidate. Any sign? Have you seen any sign yet, Jarryd, that John Rustad is going to, now that his caucus has voted against him, and now he did not accept that, but now that the party's board has voted to remove him as the leader, has there been any indication as yet? I know this just happened. Any indication that he's going to accept that, or is he going to bring them to the Carthaginian option?
I mean, I don't know how you can't accept that, because he's been the MLA up north in his riding for almost 20 years, and so I'm sure he wants to continue doing that. So, I mean, or maybe he's just gone too far to give up, and he might just push it all the way to the end. It's really too hard to tell at this point.
Oh, what is further than this? I guess he can, like, it's I've fired people in my career. I've never had to hire security to escort someone out. I've had staff walk out, and in extremely rare occasions, staff has walked someone out. But at this point, it sounds like you're going to have to hire Brinks or something to come and get him to pack up his box and escort him out of the office.
Well, so the question that I have for Jarryd is, whatever happens to Mr. Rustad, what is Dallas Brody and her fellows thinking at the moment? Is there likely to be a rapprochement between these rogue MLAs and the rest of the party? Because really, they're fighting with Rustad.
Yeah, there's the independent ones expelled by Rustad on the left end of the party, and then there's the one BC ones on the right. Jarryd, your thoughts on rapprochement with the rebels?
I think one BC they've been successful as a standalone party. You look at the polls, and they're almost at the same popularity as the BC Greens, and so I think they're just going to keep doing what they're doing and let the BC Conservatives kind of figure out their mess themselves.
Really? But even with Rustad gone, they wouldn't, I don't know. I get the impression Brody would be a contender to win the leadership of the United Party.
I could be reading it wrong, but I'm gathering this is the typical battle we have with any big tent conservative party, though. You get your red Tories and your blue Tories, and they've really fractured to the far sides. I think a lot would depend on what the leadership race is, because I imagine there's going to be candidates sort of representing, we're just getting ahead of ourselves, but still, presuming Mr. Rustad's gone, there's going to be a race, and there's going to be candidates representing each of those sorts of factions. They're trying to find a way to pull it together. And anybody who's on the outs with the party right now, I think would be taking a wait and see as to who's going to end up winning the party confidence.
I think Brody should run. Let Brody run. She is, very few people knew who she was until she was expelled, and then she's built some significant profile. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Jarryd? If Brody were to go back in and run for the leadership, do you think she'd be a competitive candidate?
She's kind of thrown all her cards on the table, and like you were saying, Cory, it's hard to keep a party together when there are so many different factions. But I think the majority of those who have stayed in the BC Conservative Party haven't joined One BC or split off because they kind of want to be a part of that Big Tent coalition. And bringing Brodie back in, I think would kind of, I don't know, would just put the party back in the same place it was when it was more fractured at the beginning.
Well, then it's not a Big Ten coalition if it's not got a place for people like Brodie. Like that
Well, it depends on how big you want to make the coalition, yeah.
Well, I mean, it's a pretty fundamental part of it. If you're going to be the Conservative Party, you got to have
Conservatives.
You got to have the Conservatives. Otherwise, you're just kind of the old Liberal coalition, and we're back to where we were 15 years ago.
I mean,
That's also a possibility.
It's a big discussion. I think some of that, assuming even if Brodie wanted to make a go at it, I guess that would land on the party executive committee on whether or not reestablish your membership even in the party, which I imagine right now is void. I mean, there's a whole lot of rabbit holes to go down with this. And if she did win the leadership, I personally, that would lead to quite a split in the remaining party. I could see a center-left breaking off. Welcome to conservative politics, as usual.
Yeah. You know, I had congratulated BC Conservatives on having such a quick and neat and nice unification relative to the Alberta experience. And it is still a lot less messy. Like, we got to remember how friggin' messy it was. Remember, like, the mass floor crossings and then just total death. And it's still not as bad as it ever got in Alberta. But you're really working on it, BC. You guys are really working on replicating to how nasty and messy the Wildrose.
Talk to some of the veterans of the PC Wildrose battles.
Yeah. There's still blood dried on the floor. Yeah. Okay. Well, where does it go from here, Jarryd? Like, actually, let me put it this way. So, if John Rustad finally bows to, yes, my caucus has voted me out. Yes, my party board has voted me out. That's it. Then we know more or less where it's going to go. What happens if he chains himself to the radiator, handcuffs himself to the radiator, locks the door, says, I'm not leaving my office. I'm the leader. You guys can go to hell. What happens then? Does someone go to court or something?
I have no idea.
Start by turning up the heat on the radiator.
Well, you have to send me out to Victoria because that'd be some great footage.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? This actually might. We're ever so slightly pre-recording here. This already might be answered by the time we're done. Jarryd, keep your Twitter feed open as we're talking. We'll come back to this if we get an update. But John, you probably got other things to do tonight. But if you're watching this, for God's sakes, for the good of the BC Conservatives and for British Columbia, I know you feel you've been wronged here and that you're on the right side, but it's time to fall on your sword and do the right thing. It's over. It's just bloody over. Okay. I guess it kind of segues with BC a bit here. The pipeline. So last Wednesday, last time we did the pipeline, our general commenting was it's got to be pretty good because Smith is facing UCP members Friday night at her the annual UCP convention in Edmonton. And for her to be able to do a peace deal with Ottawa, with a party that does not like peace with Ottawa right now, is better be pretty good. Saw the agreement Thursday. It's kind of convoluted. There's a lot of ins and outs of it, but there's some odd stuff. But yeah, Cory, you were with me at the convention, and I think to the shock and horror of the rest of Canada, Alberta Conservative members were not glowing in their praise of this agreement on Friday, were they?
Not even slightly. I mean, they're absolutely
they didn't like it,
mortified by it, and they expressed it. And watching that parallel and talking to a lot of people, and we talked to probably hundreds of people over that 2 days. Smith is still wildly popular among the members. They love her, but they think she signed on to a stinker. And it's not just there's two aspects. One is just some people don't believe the pipeline's ever going to go anyways, And the other is some of basically, as you're pointing out, is a Faustian deal. Like, we're looking at some of the commitments that have to be made in order to do this. A massive carbon capture project, which could benefit some crony capitalists and possibly suck some subsidy dollars into certain directions, which blue conservatives aren't necessarily thrilled with that sort of trade-off. A large hike in the carbon tax, industrial. What I see is actually a lot of junior operators in Alberta probably not really happy with this whole deal at all.
Yeah.
Because that's crushing their ability to be competitive on the markets while the major players play the subsidy game.
Yeah, the big players, they pay, but they also get to collect.
Yes.
Small guys don't collect. They only pay.
If you're sucking it back out through the carbon capture thing, then you can perhaps
Yeah.
It's just getting uglier and uglier as we look at it. And then with our own Dave Winnick talking about some of this stuff with obligations, domestic purchases of materials for it, which could price this out of the range, rather than having a wide option of areas to source your materials and so on. It's just a bad deal. I mean, we did expect a lot because we'd seen that hard, and we'd gotten on our case. Premier Smith said, hey, these 9 things have to be gone by Grey Cup or else. And then we came all the way up to Grey Cup and it was, or else, well, I'll tell you in 2 weeks. And we come up on 2 weeks and okay, this is going to be something big. And
she said 7 of 9's not bad, but did we even get the 7 of 10?
And this is a commitment on paper to 7 of 9, and it's just flew like a lead balloon. So, and now we're seeing the debates, we're seeing the discussions, we're seeing the Bloc Québécois, demanding the Prime Minister basically stop this. BC saying we're not going to have it. Indigenous groups are saying we're not going to have it. And the Prime Minister has just kind of said, I'm going to step out the door and let Premier Smith deal with this.
Yeah.
Because the only way this is going to happen is with ongoing support from the Prime Minister saying it's going to get done. And he's not doing that.
No.
So she's holding on to a dead document, I think.
Nigel, one of the reoccurrent themes you've talked about with Mark Carney is he likes to have his cake and eat it too. He likes a process where the process is his decision, not what we're actually trying to achieve in the process. I will recognize a Palestinian state if they do X, Y, and Z, and then it allows him to just pretend the process made something up. I got a bad feeling this might be something somewhat. This is not an agreement to build a pipeline. It's an agreement for a process to potentially build a pipeline. It potentially makes it wildly uneconomical to do if you have to use these Buy Canadian Steel provisions. We got the carbon tax built in, and then it talks about it. There's a verbal agreement. And then there's the written agreement. The written agreement does not say BC and First Nations have a veto, but talks about meaningful consultation and them being involved. But, I'm going to go to Jarryd in a bit about David Eby. But verbally, he said, no, BC and First Nations have to be on side. And if that's the case, there's a zero, we may as well just bury this document right now. It's the only thing that's getting in the ground. There's a 0% chance this thing gets built. Do you think... Smith seemed genuinely proud of this, and she does not have a reputation for being weak on Ottawa. But do you think she got snookered here?
Well, I'm not going to say that just yet, but boy, oh boy, you've raised such a raft of questions in what you just said there. I'm trying, we're very good at trying to look at things from Alberta's point of view, and we should. But I've been trying to think, well, all right, if I were Carney, what would I be wanting out of this? You want to give the impression that you have a national reach, that you're not just central Canada. You want to give the impression that, difficult though Danielle Smith is to deal with, I'm the man to do it, and I will go out and I'll engage with the rebel premier, and we'll sit down at the table and we'll work something out. And that's the image I want to portray in Eastern Canada. Now, so many of the things that we're talking about, you just brought in the price of steel into the discussion. Yeah, that's a big deal. The attitude of Quebec, I mean, you have to say, why would we care what Quebec thinks? This is all Western Canada stuff. They've had their say. They don't want a pipeline. They didn't get one. So why are we what's their spot on the table there? But it's all these are the details that people forget. Even we have to make notes before we come into to the meeting to make sure we don't forget anything. So what sticks in Eastern Canada is that the Prime Minister went out and met his biggest political opponent. They shook hands, they signed something, and everybody smiled as they went their separate ways. That's a political win for Mr. Carney. Don't ask about the details because then it doesn't look so good. And with Premier Smith, I mean, she did do this 2 days before she had a big speech to make at a convention, at which point most people hadn't, well, she may have expected that most people wouldn't have got into the details. It kind of sounds as if enough had that, some of the applause was muted. I can just see this whole thing as a charade, as a little bit of political theater that met the temporary needs of two leaders at the same time.
Well, Cory, you were there with me as this agreement was booed. It was roundly booed by the members on 2 days. The first day during a Bear Pit kind of accountability session with the members. And, Smith went into this, I think, beaming, genuinely believing she had a win and she could hold this up and, in front of the people and say, we played tough, and we won, we got this, and people booed it. The next day, she said, let's not give up on I'm going to paraphrase it, let's not give up on our country just as we're winning, for sovereign Alberta within the United Canada, and people booed again. Now, that time, there was also some applause interspersed with it. The room wasn't unanimously opposed to it. That'd be an unfair characterization. But she went into this convention, I think, expecting this to be a triumphal victory entry into Rome, and I was kind of two minds. I'm still not 100% one way or another, but I was still very much taking stock of it, analyzing it. I was shocked for one of the first times in my life to find myself the moderate in the room, where most people were hard against it.
Smith's brilliant and I think highly of her, but she's got a tendency to forget what the membership thinks. She does. If anything, it gave me a flashback of a time where she held up a thing and told Alberta, we won. It's over. She negotiated a great deal with a political leader, and they're going to say, I know I'm going to say it. And it was the mass floor crossing, which was a political catastrophe and cost every one of them their seats. The promised cabinet positions. Again, that leader fled on his commitments once he got pushback from his own party, as we're seeing Carney doing right now. And he rug pulled her. And I could see Carney doing it to her again. I think some of it is Danielle Smith trying to see the best in people. She really does, and tries to think this is genuine, this can go somewhere, but forgot what the members might think instead. And she better be really, really careful now. And hopefully it was a wake up, because as I said, everybody at the AGM really does seem to love Premier Smith. They think very highly of her, but we know how quickly conservative minds can change. She's gotten a warning shot, and I hope she's thinking really, really hard about it.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna say it, but I get Prentice vibes from Carney. I mean, looks good and professional, comfortable in the corporate boardroom, accomplished, very much hailed and respected by the blue bloods, that type of crowd. And I mean, Danielle fell for it with him to catastrophic ends. And I'm not saying this is the same thing, but I get Prentice vibes.
That's what I mean. I'm not saying it's the same, but some of that feel is coming up, and hopefully she's just learned from it.
Yeah, and I think that she's always the members do love her, but they still remember that.
Yes.
And I mean, and it took a lot for forgiveness to take place there, but they did. But they have not forgotten. So I don't know. If I was Smith, I'd be treading very cautiously around Carney here. Let's get some BC perspective on this. According to the written agreement, David Eby has to be meaningfully consulted. First Nations along the route need to be meaningfully consulted. According to Carney, verbally, they have to agree. If the verbal one is the case, and actually, because it's an MOU, it's not actually a legally binding contract. It's a memorandum of understanding. You can't take an MOU to a court. It is not a contract. But, I mean, if they are given some kind of veto, never their consent's required. Like it is just done, and there's no sense discussing it. But I know David Eby responded he said something very odd. He's open to another pipeline, but so long as the Northwest Coast tanker ban remains in place. So you can build the pipeline, but you're just not allowed to send the oil anywhere. Like it can just sit in, infinitely accruing pile of barrels in a port somewhere on the West Coast. Where is Eby on this one right now, Jarryd?
You summed it up pretty well there. The thing with the BC coast is the tanker ban covers pretty much everything north of Vancouver Island. And then obviously you have Vancouver Island in the way, so you're not going to build a port anywhere along there. And there's no cities anyways, leaving only one option, Vancouver. And Burrard Inlet, it's already too shallow to allow the existing TMX pipeline to operate at full capacity. So nobody's going to want to build a third pipeline next to two that already don't fully work. So I think what EB's doing is kind of or beat around the bush way, saying, yeah, this is never happening.
Yeah. I wouldn't imagine so. Like the hardcore eco-green movement's, a pretty major part of the BC NDP coalition.
At what point does the federal government actually exercise the power it says it has to control movement of product across provincial borders?
Maybe he does. Maybe he does. I'm trying not to be overly partisan or ideological about this. Maybe he does. Maybe he still remembers this. Pardon?
Where did that start? You're not being over partisan. Ideological. Look, I mean, the federal government comes to Alberta and says, you've got to do things our way. We want net zero by 2035. Okay, make it 2050. Your pipeline projects are not going anywhere unless we say so. All right. Well, now you're saying they will. Are you saying they still aren't going to go anywhere? I think the federal government has control over interprovincial trade movements, or it doesn't. And right now, he seems to be hiding. This is the bad thing about Carney. It always tells you something and then says, of course, you made reference to it earlier, but it's conditional on something else.
Yeah. Well, I maybe end with this, that we have a likely independence referendum coming up in 2026. There needs to be a hard deadline for approvals. I mean, and by Canadian standards, that is warp speed to get there that fast. But there needs to be a hard deadline on approvals before that vote takes place. We should probably schedule the vote for next fall, and we should know this, the answer to this, by September.
So Alberta, the tanker ban is federal legislation. It's in Carney's.
But
bring that in and
is this even feasible? Because it has the conditions attached to this made this thing economical, between the carbon tax, between Buy Canadian Steel provisions, carbon sequestration, between all of this stuff. Is it even going to be economically viable?
But there are some deadlines built into the MOU. That's one thing positive to kind of be said about it. There's some April ones and some June ones that at least start some, road signs to say whether you've actually made any progress working towards this. And if they don't hit those, then, again, I already think this thing's dead, to be honest. I'm getting from skeptical to cynical, but those are in there. And yeah, if there's an active independence referendum campaign going and these deadlines come with even those relatively modest goals haven't been reached, it's going to look really ugly on voting day.
Danielle doesn't have to defend it any longer after that.
No.
So that changes the equation as well.
Yeah. Well, or will she move the goalposts again? That's where she's getting in some real danger.
Yeah. We can't allow that. We're going to have to hold her feet to the fire on this stuff. We got a referendum likely coming up here, and these dates mean something in this MOU. You hold to them. If they don't, we declare this thing dead.
Yeah, well,
and we vote accordingly.
If she can say that the dates have come and passed despite my best efforts, they didn't happen, then whose fault is it? Obviously, the federal government's not hers.
This referendum gives her some leverage.
Yes, it does.
It does. Okay. We don't have a ton of time for it, but let's talk about Bill C9, Nigel. This is, I guess, the new, Hurt Feelings Online Act. There had been provisions in it that, if you express a sincerely held religious view, There's some spicy verses in the Bible and in the Quran around homosexuality and things like that that don't go over well in a modern progressive cocktail party. But there was protections ostensibly for sincerely held religious views expressed that in order to secure support of the Bloc Québécois for the legislation have been stripped out.
Well, I think the Liberals are brave. If you're going to go up against God, get ready. It's not going to end well. Look, Bill C9, there's two things to say. One is Bill C9 is ostensibly about online protection for children. And what it says in there is, fair enough, if that's what you want to do. We actually already have the legislation to do all that stuff, but protecting children from online predators, making it illegal to distribute non-consensual erotic pictures and that sort of thing. But it's in the bill, and they're defending it on that basis. What they have also done is they introduced a second stream in there, which deals with anti-hate. And that's where I don't know who would actually want to hoist a swastika on their flagpole in their back lawn. I don't see that happening. But if they did, they would be breaking the law. A big accomplishment. I think it's more aimed at Muslim expressions of Muslimism in Quebec. I think that's what's driving this. But to kind of make it look fair, they have also said, well, by the way, the Bible says some unkind things about homosexuality. We've got to ban that as well, and it's part of a back-scratching deal between the government and the Bloc Québécois. Now, the second thing to say is that although it would be possible for Christian conservatives to get mightily angry about this, and they should, because it's wrong, nevertheless, they'd have to understand that the Liberal Party, which is backing this, is got a very different worldview, and within their worldview, they are being entirely consistent. So it illustrates the deep cultural divide in this country at this time. The temptation when you see Mark Miller out there saying, well, we're going to have to ban these passages of the Bible. They're not going to be used as a defense of genuinely held belief anymore. Your back goes up and you think, well, who are you to say that the Bible is wrong? Within their essentially atheistic point of view, they're doing exactly what you would expect them to do. I'm surprised it's taken this long to get here.
Yeah. Cory, the bill ran into similar trouble in the previous parliament under Trudeau. They've essentially just trying again here, I guess. They said, we're going to avoid some of the pratfalls of the last one. They do not appear to be. The UK, I think, UK arrests, not even accounting for the difference in population size, UK arrests in gross numbers 3 times as many people a year for online comments as Russia. Now, to be fair, in Russia they just defenestrate you in some
They
case.
fall off a balcony.
You fall out the window. So I'm not accounting for those numbers, and that's real. But that's probably not a big number, but it's a harsher punishment than you get in Canada or in Britain for hurting feelings. But Britain arrests 3 times as many people a year, and Russia has a significantly larger population than Britain. The worry is this is going to put us on the same trajectory. You go to prison for sharing memes. There doesn't appear to be much of the way in pushback. There's elements of the center-right establishment, mainstream conservative media. Like the post-media stuff it's rented on their opinion sections, but there doesn't seem to be any major pushback from this. Even the conservatives, I think, are a little tepid on it.
No, it makes for hard political games to play because you know how it always works. You're defending hate. You're defending fascism.
I mean, you want to be the guy who defends the right to fly a National Socialist flag. No, that's not good politics.
Yeah, and exactly. And I find that I'll take that stance as a libertarian. I find the flag disgusting, and anybody who wants to wave it is doing so. But I don't think it should be illegalized. It should just be pointed out and let the public bury that down. Likewise with religious texts. I mean, most of them in every religion, if you go back, they don't match the standards of modern living. If you want to take a literal interpretation of them, well, there'd be people pushing to have slaves and, have sacrifices and things, depending on how far out of the Old Testament you want to go. But the modern world has moved past that without banning the text. There's been reformation. There's been, just realizing that we don't take those interpretations as they are in public.
Well, I guess part of the problem, Islam.
Islam's
a different.
That's
what
I
think generally the Christian world, which has a more elastic interpretation of some of these texts, whereas in Islam, it's the Quran is the literal divine, not divinely inspired, but is the literal written word of God, and it is, and of course, not every Muslim takes it this way, but very significant numbers of Muslims do. And so, some of their texts, spicier sections, if you will, a lot of people do take it very literally. And I get that some groups don't feel safe from that. But guess what? That's the price of a free society. They're going to get to say some stuff that makes you feel very uncomfortable.
Well, certainly. And I mean, we have to go after the crime rather than the text. I mean, I'm an atheist, and my views in some of the countries in the Middle East, if I tried to put those out in the open, that's the same crime, because my thoughts and speech wouldn't be allowed and I would be beaten down because it's a theocracy. On the same other side of the coin, you can't ban the texts. You just ban the acts then, and murder and honor killings and some of the other things that people might use their texts to try and justify. We just don't allow that. But the government's using that, I think, just as a easy target, low-hanging fruit to bring in another bill that's controlling speech. So they'll go after those extreme elements and say, we need to do it because of this. But as you said, it's going to come to the point where people are going to be getting incarcerated for memes, and then we all lose. It's dangerous, dangerous territory. I mean, I always err on the side of freedom.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're going to put a pin in that and go to our parting shots. First one, Jarryd, I'm going to give you a little more time since you're new to the show. We'll start with Nigel.
Okay, so what Nigel thinks is that we just had the numbers on medical assistance in dying, and they reveal that the practice continues to grow. You try to be so organized with these things, but look, 16,499 people received medical assistance in dying in 2024. Figures just out on Friday. And what a lot of people have missed is that more than 22,000 were actually approved for medical assistance in dying. Now, some did back off, decided to change their minds. But, there were more than 4,000 who were approved who didn't get it. And here we are. How often do we hear about somebody who wants a life-saving procedure, dies on the waiting list? You can't even get a death procedure. You'll die on the waiting list waiting for assisted suicide. So
that is the most Canadian thing ever.
It's yes, it's a hell of a thing.
Dying for death.
Dying, waiting to be killed, yes.
Yeah. Cory.
Just reminding folks that it's not just the pipeline that's being held up going to the west. There's Indigenous leaders, as reported in the Standard, saying that the Ring of Fire development's never going to happen in Ontario as well, which is in the Major Projects Office. So, Carney, you can't hide from this. You got to take a stand one way or another. Either nothing's getting done or you're having a fight with the Indigenous leaders.
Jarryd, your parting shot.
So I actually don't have a parting shot, but I have something that's even more.
I didn't actually tell you to have one ready, so I know I sprung this on you.
So the BC Conservative Party just released a statement saying that they, the board certified that Rustad is professionally incapacitated and thus unable to continue as party leader. Under the Constitution, there's a number of ways you can get rid of a leader. Either they die, or
they didn't kill him. They didn't kill him, right? No. All right. Just make it, putting that on the record.
Just his career.
Resignation, death, incapacitation, or a leadership review vote. And so they got creative And incapacitation, it's kind of like Article 25 of the U.S. Constitution. It usually deals with health
He's crazy.
issues. They argued that he's professionally incapacitated. So there you go.
And it's a
Now, if the party is structured anything like in Alberta, that's a bylaw under the Societies Act, and it could technically be challenged in court. But I mean, do you really want to have it? Also, in the meantime, there is obviously the option. One small party in Alberta did this. They ousted their leader, the Wild Rose Independence Party, to oust their leader. They just literally revoked his membership. And if you're not a member of the party, you can't be the leader of the party. And so that's like there are ways.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that's interesting. That's a good parting shot. It's not really a parting shot, but it's a good bulletin. Thank you. All right, mine. Milo. I'm jealous of this one. A Canadian manufacturer sold 20 APCs, armored personnel carriers, to ICE in America to help root out and get rid of illegal immigrants. My only problem with that is I want them here. I want them here.
The vehicle's not the immigrants.
Yeah. I want them here, rounding up all the people that we illegally allow in out. We're going to need some APCs here. So that's my only problem with it, is America stealing our APCs to deal with their illegal migration problem. Okay. Nigel, Cory, Jarryd, and John running the studio. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank all of you for joining us here today on The Pipeline. Remember that the Western Standard needs support for people like you to continue doing our work. If you're not yet a member of the Western Standard, go to westernstandard.news right now. Click on subscribe. It's $10 a month or $20 a year for unlimited access to all Western Standard content. To get past that pesky paywall, I know when we were at the United Conservative Party convention this weekend, some people said, "Oh, you guys have that paywall." I'm like, "Well, stop being a freeloader. We're not working for free here. We could." You see this newsroom behind us? We got people busy pretending to work back there. Me, I'm pretending to do my job and whatnot. This is a real business. So if you're hitting that paywall, that means it's time to pay up, become a member. Only $10 a month or $100 a year. Thank you very much for joining us today, and God bless.